I'm Rich Bohr with J. Parr Maryland Living, and I'm here with Maria Leary from Truist Bank.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Leary. I work with Truist Bank. I've been a banker for about 20 years. I'm currently a branch leader, and I specialize in helping small businesses start up and grow.
That's excellent. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Great.
I know we've been working together a little bit, kind of getting my shenanigans in order. So when somebody's starting out building a small business, they have no direction on where to go. Like, it's kind of like, I have this idea, I have this thing, I have this skill that I'm good at, but where do I start? What would you tell somebody that is coming to you looking for advice for, like, where to start?
That's a great question, Rich. So, I love the fact that people they have a dream and they want to do something on their own, be their own boss. Maybe they have an opportunity that's in front of them. So it's a great and a very exciting time for new business clients. And the way that I tell everyone to start is to get within the mindset of, you need to separate your business and your personal expenses as soon as possible. And the easiest way to do that is start thinking about, how am I going to manage my banking? And the reason that I like to start there is because once you start with that very simple answer to that question of how you're going to manage things, you can start to evolve with the other things that you need to think about, such as, how am I going to organize my business? Do I want to be a sole proprietor? Do I want to be an LLC? Is this a corporation? And then from there, you can start to look at, okay, how do I organize the business? So those are really the first two places to start.
So when you want to figure out what kind of business structure to have, where do you go? What are the resources to find that out?
That's a great question. So what I actually, because I've been in the industry for about 20 years, I have compiled a list of businesses that locally that I can connect my clients with in order to help them get started. I think I sent that to you some time ago too, just to give you some information. But one of the places that I like to start with is an organization that's called SCORE. It's spelled SCORE, like scoreboard, I like to say. And the reason that this organization is great is because of two reasons, in my opinion. One is that they set you up with a free mentorship for that type of industry that you're interested in. So, maybe you go in and say, I've been in construction for 30 years. I want to start my own business. How do I get started? If you go to the website, you put your information into SCORE, they'll give you someone locally that you can connect with. They offer virtual meetings. I believe they still offer in-person meetings. And on that website, there's also so much knowledge that you can start to look at with when you're developing your business plan, when you're trying to figure out where to start and what to do. And then once you get hooked up with a mentor, they can also tell you about all of the other opportunities that SCORE has. They do have seminars that do cost money, but they do have a lot of free services as well. Okay. And SCORE is made up of entrepreneurs that are either active or that may be retired, or CFOs or CEOs of companies. So these are really top-notch people that they have in their mentorship program. And it's free, which is the best part.
It's definitely important when you're starting out. Yeah.
Another resource that I like to give my clients is just the local Small Business Resource Center here in Anne Arundel County. I like to send them that link and that website. That way they can also get connected with individuals as well that are in the county, people that are local. And once you start to connect people, they start to connect you with others. So that just helps you to build your network. They may have an idea of a CPA that specializes in that certain type of business, or they may be able to connect you with an attorney that you might need. So there's lots of opportunities and resources there. And they can also help you get involved in networking groups, which, as you know, networking is very important to growing your business because, once again, you're connecting yourself with people and you're building your network.
Yeah. So, Maria, when somebody's starting out and they're getting all this information, and they need a partner like yourself, where should they? God bless that son of a girl. So, Maria, you mentioned how important it is to separate your personal and your business.
Yes, absolutely.
why or where would somebody work with a local bank or someone like yourself?
Great question. So in my opinion, it's great to start with a small business banker such as myself. So what I'll do with my clients is, first of all, I'll sit down and I'll have a discovery meeting with them. I'll find out, where are you in the process? What are your dreams? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? So I really like to find out about them. And, the way that I personally handle myself with banking situations is that I really want to get comfortable and know the business and know the individual, because then you can really tap into how can you help that person grow. So that's where I always start from the basic. And then when it comes to the accounts themselves, I just go over very simplistically, after listening to them, I make recommendations. So I would say to you, okay, where are you in the process? How do you see managing? I'll ask you things that you might know the answers to.
Right.
Like, what are your annual revenues going to be for the first year? A lot of clients don't know that. And that's okay. It's okay not to know that. It's okay to make projections, right? Like there's no problem with that. And then some other questions that I'll ask them is, how many employees do you have? Is it just going to be yourself? Again, I mentioned this earlier, but how are you going to organize your business? And then once we have that discovery meeting, that's when I come back in and I make those recommendations. Right. So when it comes to the accounts, I work for Truist Bank, and we have a very simple startup business checking account that's great for startup businesses. I love it because, and things can change, but there's no minimum deposit, there's no monthly maintenance fee. It does all depend on your activity. But it's just something to help someone get started so they don't have to worry about keeping a minimum. They don't have to worry about, do I have to, keep X amount of dollars in the account? So that's to avoid a monthly maintenance fee. So that's really important. Yeah. I also, even though it's from the start, I like to go over business credit. And the reason that that's important is because of fraud. There is so much fraud on the consumer side, on the business side that we see every day. So I talk to my clients from the start about how we can protect you with your accounts. So, for example, using a credit card over a debit card, and why that's important. Because when you use a credit card, you're using the bank's money. And when you're using a debit card, you're using your money. Right. So that when fraud occurs, it happens on the bank's money and not your money. So there's lots of other reasons that I promote that as well. Right. And sometimes for a startup business owner, that can be a lot of overwhelming information. Yeah. So I always like to make sure that I know, listen, I'm letting you know this. I know that we're not going to open all of these services today, but I like to lay the brickwork, because there are so many things that a new business owner can get overwhelmed with. And if I let them know along the way, okay, these are the stages that we're going to start with. This is how we're going to layer, and this is how I'm going to help you grow your banking relationship. It'll help, again, get them into that mindset of, I need to separate my personal, I need to separate my business, and then this is how I can manage them.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Maria, you mentioned business credit.
Yes.
Could you run us through that process? Because it's not as simple as just saying, hey, I have a business. Can you give me some money? Right.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, Rich. And what I always tell my clients is that I set that expectation that you are your business. So how you manage your personal credit is a direct indication of how you'll manage your business credit. So it used to be, like years ago when I started, that businesses didn't have to personally guarantee, and that banks would give these large lines of credit that are unsecured. Nowadays, we don't do that. The banking industry has changed. Regulations and rules have changed. Right. Banks, we have to watch our backs a little bit too. And right. We've seen that in the banking industry. So first of all, when someone applies for a type of a loan, usually I like to start with the credit card, as I mentioned. That helps them with their working capital. So it can help them to, purchase some supplies or, make a deposit on something. So it just helps get everything started. It also shows the bank responsible credit usage. And in order to qualify for a loan later down the road, that's going to be really important. Right. So, and then even going back to your, just your deposit relationship, how you manage that all feeds into a credit decision. So, you come in, you're a startup. We talk about the different types of deposits accounts. I always talk about the credit card, and that's where I always like to start. Now, if I have a client that comes in and needs a larger need, we look at a couple of different things. So usually if it's a startup business like this, unfortunately, banks don't usually lend to businesses unless you've been in operating for 2 years or more. And the reason for that is because we need to see how your business has performed. And if we don't have those historical numbers, then we really can't gauge if the business will what we call cash flow. So is there enough money coming into the business in order to pay the expenses of what you currently have plus the loan that we would give you? And although that's not reported to your personal credit, again, we use you as a personal guarantee because if for some reason the business isn't able to pay back the loan, you as an individual are still responsible. And normally when I'm working with these types of businesses, we're talking about startup sole proprietors, single owner LLCs, not as much as corporations. Now, I will just say, and not get too in the weeds, but if it's a nonprofit organization, the process is different. But we're just really talking about those startup businesses. There are small business loans that are available. What we need to see with those numbers really are looking at the individual themselves with what kind of experience they've had in the industry. So earlier I made an example of someone that's been in construction for 30 years. Well, someone that's been in construction for 30 years, they have a network of people, they have the knowledge, they have the experience. So a loan for them would maybe make sense. So that may be something that we could explore. But let's say the same construction owner says, I want to open a nail salon. Well, that's a totally different industry, right? So there's a much difference between I've been in construction for 30 years versus I want to open a nail salon. Not that they can't do it, but when it comes to the lending piece, that's something that the bank and that the Small Business Administration would look at and say, well, that really doesn't make sense. So that's really where we get into just having that loan conversation up front with clients. If you're in a position where you can purchase some commercial property, that is what we call collateral, because not only are we having you guarantee the loan and the business guarantee the loan, but also there's some type of collateral behind it, so that should something happen, at least there's something for the bank to kind of get their recourse on the funds.
That's all wonderful, excellent information.
Thank you.
I did notice that you mentioned cash flow.
Yes.
Could you kind of elaborate a little more?
Oh, of course, yes, because that's a term that we throw out in banking all the time. So thanks for asking me that too and clarifying. So cash flow has to do with the money that you have coming in and the money that you have coming out. And so we in the banking world refer to that as the cash flow cycle. And it seems like a very simple thing to manage and think about, but it can be very complex with businesses, especially if you're in a position, and I know I keep using this example, but I'll go back to the construction. You have someone that starts a project and a third of the price of the project is paid up in front. That's when they usually start to purchase materials, which is where that credit card can come in handy, right? Because you need the money in order to start the project. So you're kind of fronting that for yourself if you need to. And then you start your project. And along the way, you may do a billing cycle, or you may just simply, as soon as the project's finished, present the bill. So there's different ways of thinking about that. So if you are in a position where you are going to bill them, that's going to extend your cash flow cycle, because that means that you still have all these expenses. You have to pay your people. Maybe you've got some W-2 contractors. Again, you've got your materials. Maybe your credit card bill is due. Also gas. And you have to feed yourself and pay your own bills. So there's a lot of things that go into that. So if you bill, 60 days or 30 days out, you have to think about that I'm not getting that cash back into my account for that extended period of time. So the longer you wait, the longer your cash flow cycle is. But if you can very simply get that money in faster, then that will help speed up that cash flow cycle so that you can pay yourself, pay your guys, eat.
Do an advance, maybe like 50% down, and then 30 days to close, or
Right. So yes, and again, I know that was just the example for the contractors, but it's something for all businesses to think about, and just an example of why cash flow management is so important. And so one of the things that I like to talk about when I'm in my discovery meeting with my clients is, how are you going to bill for your services?
Right.
Are you going to send them an email? Are you going to present them with something on the spot? Are you going to handwrite something? Most people don't handwrite things these days, but you would be surprised, people still do, and that's okay. But how are you going to manage that process?
Right.
And that's when your digital tools really do come in handy. The one thing that I like to tell all my business clients is don't chase your checks. So that means that you want to get your money as soon as possible because you want to help with your cash flow. And one of the easiest way to do that, quite honestly, is credit card processing. Now, I have a lot of people that shy away from credit card processing because they don't want to pay the monthly fees, they don't want to pay the bills. But when you think about how you may be extending out how soon you get paid, it actually supersedes any fee that you would pay because you're getting your money sooner and faster, and that way you can turn it around and do whatever you need to do with it in order to manage your business. So, right there on the spot, you finish the job, you hand someone a credit card reader, and you get it done. And then you're not sending, billing invoices later, making phone calls and saying, hey, where's my check? I sent this invoice to you.
Right.
So there's a lot of worry that is off of your mind, and that peace of mind is really important. Other digital tools, so let's say you do get a check, right? Mm-hmm. Don't feel like you have to come into the branch in order to make deposits. If you have a phone, you have a bank. So there's lots of ways that you can make deposits from your phone electronically. You can actually just take your mobile device, you can take a picture of your check, it gets deposited. If you need to have some type of immediate availability, at Truist, we give you that availability, if you need it. There are some fees involved, but for business owners that really need to get that money because they need to speed up their cash flow process, they need to purchase other materials, that's going to be very important for them. So I never want my clients to feel like they have to come in and wait in line in order to make a deposit. There's lots of different ways to do that. Coming to the bank is not as convenient as it used to be. Mm-hmm. So that's why digital tools are so essential into that cash flow cycle, and then helping the client to manage their everyday business. And when it comes to the online tools as well, there are different ways that we can help you with invoicing, with billing. You can sync up your online banking to your QuickBooks. You can manage things from your phone, your laptop, your iPad, whatever device you may have. Yeah. So there's lots of ways that you can take advantage of digital tools. Again, that helps you with your cash flow cycle. And then the last thing that you could do if you need to make deposits is that you can use a debit card. Now, I know I talked bad about debit cards earlier. They do have a place in the world if you need to withdraw funds or if you need to make deposits. Okay. So, I worked all day, the branch is closed, how am I going to get this check in? Maybe the check is too large for mobile deposit. Good for you. That's awesome. But you have the availability to go to an ATM and make the deposit as well. And you can also make cash deposits in the ATM too. Wow. And it's a very safe transaction. I have a lot of clients that can be very skeptical about it, but I have a lot of clients that utilize it and it works really well for them.
What's the wait period between the mobile deposit, ATM deposit, going into the bank and just depositing the check there? What's the wait period before available funds? Because you mentioned, if you need funds available sooner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so availability of funds depends on many different variables, but one of the biggest is the relationship and the health of the account. So how long have you had the account? Have you had any returned checks? What do your balances look like? Have you been in the negative? So those are all the things that the bank takes into consideration when giving a recommendation of a check hold or check availability, as you mentioned it. It also depends on how much the check is for, so that can also play a part in it. What I really love about Truist online banking platform right now is that if you make a mobile deposit and you've got to have that funds available immediately, you can actually make a choice in order to do that. Again, I mentioned there's a fee, right, but that fee is that supersedes, your availability. Right. That peace of mind that you have when you have that money available is really critical for a lot of business owners. And, why is there a fee? It's my money. How do I collect it? Because that's risk on the part of the bank. And that's something that the banking industry has to very closely manage. So when we allow clients to do their own banking and then let them have availability immediately of the funds, that's a big risk for the bank. Because it's not that I don't trust my client, my business owner, but whomever's writing you that check, we have no knowledge of that. So that's a risk that we're taking. And, it does take a couple days for things to clear. Things have definitely sped up, especially within my span of 20 years in banking. And things do go through more quickly, but it's not usually the next day. It's usually at least a 2-day float. So that's where that information, that fee comes in.
Okay. And that's the same whether it's an ATM deposit, a mobile deposit, or walking into the bank.
Yeah. So right now at the branch, it's just on the mobile deposit side. That will be something that'll come on the ATM. The recommendation, though, as you mentioned, is the same across the board. What we can do in the branch sometimes is that we can make an exception and say, okay, we know you. We're comfortable with you. You've got a credit card with us, so there's some recourse. So there are lots of things that we take into making that decision, and sometimes we can waive that hold. But then, very frustratingly, sometimes our back office can come back and say, no, we need to place this account on hold, and this is why. As a branch leader, I have the ability to work with my clients and sometimes make an exception. But again, it's an exception process, and it's based on a lot of different variables.
Okay. And now, I assume if you deposit cash into the ATM, this would be that's an immediate.
Yes, that's an immediate availability. And then, when just speaking of cash, a lot of my clients think of those electronic deposits as cash because they're available right away. So, for example, a transfer into the account from Zelle or PayPal or Venmo or Cash App or whatever other, platforms are out there, that is available to you right away, just as is if it were cash.
Okay.
We think of it differently when we're looking at the fee structure on the account. That's not actually cash. Cash is actually like dollars and cents, but it's available in the same way that cash would be.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
With all that, you have your cash flow, you have your business credit, you have everything working for you. How do you protect all of that?
So a great way to protect yourself and your business is to get business insurance. That seems like a very simple thing, and sometimes it's not a priority for businesses, and it should be. Because if something happens to you while you're performing the work or with one of your services, you want to make sure that you're covered. A lot of businesses will choose to open and operate as an LLC versus being a sole proprietor because they have that extra level of limited liability. But having an insurance agent for business insurance is very important. You want to protect yourself, you want to protect your employees. At Truist, we partner with an organization called McGriff that's also nationwide, and they can help businesses with insurance as well. I have even connected them with business owners that have had insurance for a long time, and just like any other type of insurance, right? They can give a quote, they can be very competitive. It's a company that I really like. I personally have my insurance with them as well, and I can tell you just from a competitor rate standpoint, they were able to shop a bunch of different companies and find me the best opportunity. So business insurance is really important.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for joining us. And
my pleasure.
How would folks be able to find you?
So I am currently with Truist Bank, of course. I work out of the Arnold branch. My direct phone number is 410-349-1008. You can also find us on the web at www.truist.com. Also, if you'd like to send me an email personally, I'll say it and I'll spell it for you. It's maria.leary@truist.com. So that's MARIA.LEARY@TRUIST.com.
Awesome. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Nice seeing you again. Thanks, everybody.